Hello everyone and welcome to another tier list. Um this time we will be actually ranking all of the different fighters that have been released up till now, July 2024. Um so the new set would be Slings and Arrows. Um yeah, I've took some time just to let the new set settle in the meta. And yeah, I think now that the first qualifier of Summer Legends has completed, Team League is also like getting to its end. I think it is a good time just to give like a good ranking before the actual Summer of Legends tournament starts. Just for you like to see where which fighters are, which ones you should probably ban, and which ones not so much. Um, as you see, I've done this in a bit more wide spectrum with the tiers. We have many different ones, because I think there are just so many fighters now that we have to make some like considerations. The S plus, for example, will probably be the ones that will be banned every single time. S would be also potential bans, and then A plus A will be the picked ones, and so on. But yeah, I think there's just so many things to like differentiate between the fighters that so many tiers are probably needed. Other than that, this is of course only like my list. I've talked to some people on the Discord about it, and made some adjustments, but this is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree if there are like some fighters that you see higher in some way. Feel free to write me in the comments why that is the case. And yeah, one last thing, I will be excluding Deadpool because Deadpool, of course, is not um, a competitive fighter, so there's no like reason actually putting him here in the tier list. But if I had to, he would probably be around D or F tier. Um, with that said, of course, S plus best, F is worst as always, and I will be doing a small structure in the tiers where they go from worst in the tier on the right to best in the tier on the left. Um, yeah, I think that's it. So let's just jump right into it. The worst character in Unmatched right now, in my opinion, it has to be Spike. Um, I think this is no surprise to anyone who kind of knows Spike and has watched any other tier list, so I'll make this brief. He still has the same problem of basically having a full deck of blank cards once Drusilla is dead, and she will die pretty fast because Spike's defenses are pretty bad. Um, and yeah, since you have no way to move your shadow tokens and always place them adjacent to you, you don't have any passes once Drusilla is dead. The opponent will just run away and you have no chance. Then, next up, we have Angel. It's always a debate between these two who is actually the worst. Um, Angel has a similar problem where Faith, as his sidekick, is just incredibly squishy, even though she has 8 HP, which is kind of like massive for a sidekick, but still she dies so fast. Um, and then Angel's ability is just a curse. I think he would be way better without it. Um, that he draws a card whenever he loses a combat on offense, which is like really bad because you're not dealing any damage, and then you also draw a card, meaning you go further into your deck and you will just fatigue like in kinda 10 turns, and that's really bad. Um, then to round out the Buffy trio in F tier, we'll put Willow. Willow also kind of has the Angel problem where she has insane exhaustion issues just because all of her blind boosting. She has very limited amount of defenses for herself. So she has to rely on Terra to body block very well, which is also not often that easily done. Of course, she has knowledge of the craft, which can help her a bit, but still, yeah, you can't just run away from her and she will die. And then last in F tier, I would put Squirrel Girl. It it's a pain for me because I love Squirrel Girl. Her cards are really cool with the flavor text, but she just sucks. Being a maximum move 4 melee fighter is just bad. Like, everyone can run away. Of course, you have a decent fatigue game, but you can almost never reach the opponent. Which is pretty bad because your cards rely on like having as many squirrels around them as possible. And then with the squirrels, they can't feint. They can only use 3 defense cards in total in the deck, which is really bad. So the opponent always knows what they will be defending with if they ever defend. And yeah, they can just farm effects on them, passes, and yeah, she's just bad. Then next up in D tier, these are not completely useless, but still pretty useless. Just that they have like 1 or 2 decent matchups into the high tiers. So in very niche cases, you might be able to pick them if you like already know that your opponent has 2 good fighters, but still there will probably be better options in the top tiers. But hey, if you wanna like play one of them, yeah, they have some decent matchups. Starting with Oda. Um, yeah, Oda is pretty bad just because he relies only on his honor guards basically to deal damage. Once they are dead, he only has 4 or 5 value attacks, and then that's basically it. No force, no, like 2 or 3 threes if you didn't use them earlier, and that's it. Also problem, his boost values, just like Squirrel Gods, suck ass, so he often isn't even able to flank the opponent and use his honor guard cards, and then the honor guards, of course, have the same issue as the squirrels. They can't feint, their defenses suck pretty much, and yeah, Oda just gasses out against most of the fighters. He has a few good matchups into like some of the top tiers that don't have as much straw, but even there, yeah, like I said, there are probably better options every time. Next up, we have good old Jekyll and Hyde. Um, Jekyll and Hyde always have the problem of fighting with their own deck. You might be Dr. Jekyll and don't have Dr. Jekyll cards, or you might go in for a big high turn, but then you don't have defense because you only have Jekyll cards in hand. Then you have the issue with Forever Hide that you can basically never like really boost it up more than with 1 card. And yeah, you always take 1 when you have to maneuver as Hyde, which means you will always take 1 whenever you want to attack the opponent because no one will actually let you pure evil them. Um, and yeah, it's just consistency issues, and then you can be abused so easily. Uh, it's just not fun. I mean, they can be pretty good if they have the right draw, but just not worth picking. Next up, we have good old Spider-Man. It's pretty sad. I mean, it's Spider-Man. We all love Spider-Man, but sadly he sucks. His ability is almost useless in many matchups. If the opponent even has like 2 or 3 different cards with like a 3 printed value, which they usually have, well, what does the ability say to you? Okay, maybe it's like not their 6 value attack, but hey, you probably could have guessed that from the game state anyways. Um, of course, there are some fighters where this might matter at some point, um, but even in like in competitive play, you usually can deduce like which cards your opponent will play. Like you can say, okay, it will either be like this or that, and then you have like these 2 options, and you probably play around the worst one. So even if it's the other and you guessed wrong, it will not be as bad. So the ability just kind of does nothing, and then his deck just sucks overall. He has his 2 passes, but being a solo melee fighter, he always has to approach. His defenses are really bad. He doesn't have feints as well. Um, and yeah, he's just bad. It's sad to put him here, but yeah. Next up, we have King Arthur. Yeah, I mean, it's Arthur once Merlin dies. Again, his boost values suck. He cannot approach, he has to spend so many cards boosting, and will just gas out. It's just sad. I mean, it would be cool if Arthur was like a bit better. I've tried to make him work with two Excaliburs in deck, but even then he still is bad. But yeah, not much to say about Arthur. Um, Next up we have the Invisible Man. This one might be able to like go up to C tier at some point, maybe. If more like squishy fighters get released. But right now, Invisible Man has just the issue of being outclassed in any way, like with the power creep that we have seen lately with newer sets like being usually pretty viable competitively and like some crazier card effects being added, some crazier concepts. He just gets outclassed. His fatigue game usually doesn't even work anymore, which is pretty bad. He also doesn't have any defensive cancels, which is even more sad for him, with all the crazy new effects that we've seen. And yeah, he just lacks the damage overall to close out a game. Of course, he has his few good matchups, like against Alice, for example, he can work. Um, but even then, who even picks Alice? Like, she is pretty decent right now, but would you really go a counter pick to the counter pick that's like even worse into everything else? I don't think so. Maybe we'll see a Invisible Man rise again if like we get a few more Shakespeares um in the meta, but I don't think so. And then lastly, I went with Cloak and Dagger for D tier. Cloak and Dagger just have a consistency issue again, that they need to draw their good cards fast in order not just to die. They only have 8 health each, and once one of them is dead, um, well, you basically already lost the game, because with only having one fighter, you become really predictable. The opponent can always play around that, and yeah, your whole deck just becomes worse, basically. Um, if it's Cloak that who dies, Dagger, yeah, she can get some good combos, but without the discard from Cloak, the opponent will have enough defenses to actually withstand that. And if Dagger is the one who dies, well, Cloak might get some discards, but won't have the damage to kill the opponent. So, yeah, it just sucks anyways. And I mean, yeah, they are combo characters. They can just pop off in like 1 out of 10 games and just destroy the opponent in one turn. It can happen, but like, do you go for a 1 in 10 game chance to win, or do you just go for a safe pick overall? I think the latter is the case most often. So yeah, they will be the top of D tier. And then shout out to Dave on the Game League Discord. It pains me, but I think in C tier we have Robin Hood. Um, Robin Hood, just like Invisible Man, from my point of view, just has been power creeped a bit. Um, I remember like in the early days, of playing, he was really, really good. Like, his pressure was insane. There were not many fighters who could actually break through his outlaws and actually pressure him and deal damage to him, but now there are so many fighters that can just deal so much damage over the top of his max 3 value defenses. It's insane, like he dies off 3 or 4 attacks in a game, and oh, it hurts. Also with like even more aggro characters being released, like Tesla, we have Houdini, we have Tomoe now. They're just more solid options overall. Robin kind of lost his niche in the meta, just from my point of view. I mean, he's still decent into some of the top tiers. He has a good chance against Wukong. He has a more than good chance against Houdini. Um, but even then, like, there's still better options, usually. But yeah. Next up, I would love to put this character lower, but it's Black Panther. Um, Panther is a tricky one because his whole deck, of course, relies around uh, stealing cards. So you have to be lucky to get the right cards from the opponent. Um, his biggest problem is, of course, Shuri, his sidekick. You rely on Shuri so much. Her schemes add like so much value if you get them. Two stolen cards each is probably like half of the cards that you will steal per game. Added extra, so yeah, I mean you have a total of I think 10 cards that you can steal with Panther, and four of them are just in the two Shuri schemes. So once she is dead, like half of your steals are gone. And since you rely on her so much, and she only can defend for a max value of 3, being a 6 health sidekick, well, she dies instantly and you cry. So if you have a Shuri Scheme opening hand, well, nice, you have a chance. If you have two of them, you probably have a good chance. If you have none of them, which is like the normal case, you don't have a chance. And yeah, that's just sad. Other than that, once Shuri is dead, since you are a move to melee fighter at that point, you will have to boost a lot to get to the opponent because you will have to approach because you don't have any passes. And hey, guess what's happening if you boost? You draw more cards. So yeah, it's just pretty sad. I mean, he has his few matchups into the top tiers, most notable probably being Yanenga, where he's actually pretty good in because Yen has no feints and I mean, most of her attacks are three, so it's fine for Shuri to just have three value defenses. But even there, he relies on luck so much that I can't put him higher than C tier. Even in the matchups where he is technically good in, you can't just lose the gamble, and yeah, that will lose you the game. So can't put him higher. But I mean, it's probably better this way. Um, Next up we have Miss Marvel. Yeah, all of Teen Spirit in C or lower. I guess no one is surprised by this. Yeah, Miss Marvel is just way too dependent on maps. She has to have a good map, and with three map bans right now, there's just no way that you get really good value out of her. Even on the few maps where she is good, the opponent can always play around like her zoning stuff. If you're afraid of a big windup, you just go in a space where she can't attack you from a different zone. If you are afraid of like an embiggen, you just go in a try zone and you're fine. The opponent can basically always control which card effect you get and which not, which like limits your options even more, and then they can play around it, and yeah, your deck just sucks from that point on. I mean, on a good map like McMinnville, Raptor Paddock, yeah, you can still make some good plays, but again, you're so reliant on the map, which your opponent will probably ban at the start, that it's not even worth picking her. Um, and yeah, next up we have Dr. Sattler, not T-Rex, not yet. Uh, Dr. Sattler. I mean, Dr. Sattler is probably one of the best anti-aggro fighters that are in the game. Like, it says much if you can just double maneuver against T-Rex the whole game, not attack once, and you win. Because you just have so much healing. Um, but of course, that only works if the opponent actually has to approach you. Um, which so many fighters don't have to, because they have passes. Dr. Sattler doesn't have any passes, so she will have to approach in 90% of the matchups every single time. And, well, if she approaches, the opponent can just attack her, move away, attack her, move away. Meaning, like, 6 out of her 10 defensive auto damage won't go through. Malcolm is really squishy, just like Panther. She relies on her sidekick so much with his two life finds away cards, milling cards from the opponent's deck, and well, Malcolm can also only defend for 3, I think. Um, and yeah, like also she has a big consistency issue with her deck having so many one-off cards and two-offs. And like the one-offs are even like pretty bad. They're just there for the quotes from the films, and I don't know. Her deck is just inconsistent. I mean, she has her few good matchups. If the opponent goes like Achilles, Yen, Houdini stuff line up. That's like mostly aggro and Yen. You can pick her, but even then, there are better options right now in the meta, with so many new fighters being released that are good into the high-end top tier. It's just not worth picking her. Like in a format like Team League right now, where like half of the roster is banned, and you already know like the first five picks of the opponent. Yeah, you can get through with the Sattler pick, um, and might have a chance. But in like actual Banquest, which will be relevant for some of Legends, probably not. Next up, I have Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary, of course, has the big problem. Well, she has two big problems. First of all, she plays low hand count for the whole game, usually, meaning she is pretty limited with her options. She always relies on what she top decks, usually. So if you have three cards, well, you have to hope that you draw like one or two good cards on your maneuvers to actually use your third action. But then the second problem is to even get to the three cards, because, well, your opponent can play around that. If you have four cards in hand, well, they probably just don't attack you and you start your turn with four cards. If you have three cards in hand, well, you have to hope that you have two, like, draw cards in your hand, because otherwise, well, you will probably go down to two if you defend and the opponent is attacking, and yeah. Like, you have the two closers, which give you like uh, three action turns, but even then, like, your opponent can feint twice and that's it. Uh, it's just a bit sad with Mary. I mean, she has her good matchups into the top tiers, most notably being Yen and Bigfoot, which are really, really relevant right now. If the opponent has them, yeah, you might get through with a Mary pick. Um, but yeah, I think I'm repeating myself. They're just better options. If you like her and you like spend the time to actually practice her, go for it. She has her niche cases of being good, but overall, I would not recommend picking her. Then next up, we have our first Links and Arrows character, being Hamlet. Yeah, sad, my dear Hamlet friends. I know I suffer as well, but Hamlet sadly sucks a bit. Um, the question at the start of each turn basically has two bad outcomes for you. Drawing two on each maneuver pushes you so far into your deck that the opponent can usually just run away and hide. You have to boost every turn, you lose value. Pretty bad for you. Not to be, well, you get +2 onto your attacks, which is pretty good. I mean, you can get up to an 8 value attack with that. But you also take 2 yourself, so if you can only attack once per turn with it, for example, well, you will take 2 and the opponent will take an additional 2 at best. Maybe they don't take an additional 2, but only 1, like if they defended well. Um, just not a good trade for you. Of course, you have your three method in the madness schemes, which can like put cards on the bottom of your deck to kind of um, get rid of the initiative factor that you always have to approach. But even those, if you add it up, you come like to kind of 50 cards in your deck, and you have to draw 2 on every maneuver, or take 2 every turn. Um, just leading to you still having basically a 30 card deck, and being a move to melee fighter, you will have to approach, and that's bad. Um, I mean, again, he has his few cases of being useful. Like, if the opponent doesn't have a way to pressure his health and just plays a value game, he's pretty okay. Like, he can play a value game against Medusa and sometimes win, sometimes not. It depends a bit. Um, but that's definitely possible. And on the other hand, he can also like aggress some characters pretty well. Um, just with his not to be turns. If you can heal pretty well, but it's just always risky to pick him because you rely on your schemes, you rely on like good draw order to actually get use of your not to be turns, and otherwise you'll just be overdrawing. And I mean, he has so many glaring weaknesses, no feints, always having to approach, and it's not great. Um, it's a bit sad. He's such a fun character, but yeah. And then top of C tier, I have put Buffy. This might be a bit of a controversial take, but I think Buffy is not as bad as people think. I mean, she's still C tier, don't get me wrong, but I think she has her matchups, especially like with Slings and Arrows being released now. I think she's pretty decent into them, almost all of them. Um, of course, at the start of your game, you can choose which sidekick you want to have, which is really nice just to have as an option. Maybe you want to draw and discard from Giles, or you just want pure combat power with Xander. You can always choose. Then you, of course, have your ability, which lets you move through opposing fighters. In many cases, the ability does basically nothing. In other cases, although, if the opponent has like a sidekick or even multiple sidekicks, the ability can be really, really good. And like Buffy's whole thing is being good against multi-sidekick characters because she has a lot of ping. Um, she has like Slayer strength with it, which is so just better wily fighting. She has her two value defense, the two value blue, where she can just ping a lot of one health sidekicks. And I mean, we have Robin. We just got Shakespeare, who is like pretty squishy and relies on his sidekicks to not die. She can be pretty decent against the sisters because she can keep up the draw and ping many of them at the same time. Um, so yeah, I mean, she is not great, but she has a few good matchups. And yeah, then let's move up to C plus. Now these I would start are characters that are probably viable competitively. You should think about them in some kind of way in the draft. They might be a pretty good late counter pick into some of the good options. I mean, they will still be pretty niche, so you won't get to play them every single time, but there will be cases for you to just pick them. Um, Starting with Raptors. Raptors on a good map for Raptors, in the right matchup, can be beasts. I mean, what can they do? They have, I think, 7 action gains in their whole deck. They are super aggro. Um, of course, weakness being only 10 defenses, but well, you don't need so many defenses if you're attacking like 3 or 4 times every turn, and the opponent will have no cards in their hand to punish you. Of course, weakness being if the opponent can actually keep up with them and get some draw in on defense and counterattack, then yeah, you might crumble a bit. But even then, your defenses aren't as bad, and you're move 3, so you can at least run away quite decently. Um, they have their good matchups, where they can just combo the opponent just like in one turn, and they're pretty good. Most notably, probably being Little Reg. They can handle She-Hulk. I think they're fine against Jill. Um, just like fighters that don't have a lot of movement effects, combo breakers, or anything like that can stop Raptors. Or like put like heavy pressure onto them. Um, well, yeah. In kind of the same niche, I would put Bullseye in like the combo characters. Um, just like Raptors, he will probably attack every turn a bunch of times. Just with Bullseye, you have the problem of relying on your schemes usually to keep up the aggression. I mean, you have the boostables that can draw you cards. You have for my next trick on your combat cards to draw, but you rely on your schemes to actually like put the full aggression onto the opponent. So there's a bit of a consistency issue, but on the other hand, you're still ranged. You can attack from 5 spaces away, so he isn't as vulnerable as Raptors. Um, so I would put them like kinda in this interchangeable, like next to each other. They're just really good aggro options if you find a good case to use them. Then next up, let me search. I can't see him. Ah, there. Okay, we have Beowulf. um, Bayo, I think, just gets ignored by many players. I think he has like one of the lowest pick rates in from all of the fighters. Like even like Panther and Robin get picked more often than Bayo because everyone just forgets that he exists, and I can see why. I mean, he has no like really outstanding features to his deck and strengths, but I mean, he can be a decent option into many fighters. He can handle Achilles, he can handle Bigfoot, he can handle Luke Cage. He has like some decent matchups. He can handle Drug, he can handle Red. Um, Problem, of course, being his lack of defenses and that the opponent can always like play around his rage. If you don't get your epic poems, which can be fainted, or most notably your vigors, um, you will probably be a sitting duck with no rage for like half of the game because the opponent can always like think of when to go in, um, and actually pressure you because well they know how much rage you have, so they know if your cards suck or not. Um, so yeah, having this limited resource, of course, is a bit of a problem, but I mean, you have enough ways to play around it, and you have your decent matchups, so don't sleep on Beowulf. I mean, he is pretty solid right now. I wouldn't put him higher than this, but I have seen good use cases of him in the drafts, and I'm pretty happy about it because Bayo is cool. Next up, I will put Annie Christmas, and this might be a controversial one because I think many people just see her a bit higher on the tier list. I can see why. Annie technically has the tools to be higher on the list. Problem just being, just like with other fighters, she fits one certain niche of being like good against the high health, chunky fighters. But there are just other characters who do that better, in my opinion. Um, Also, she has like a bit of a consistency issue with um, actually getting her lanyards for the draw and lowering her health because the opponent can otherwise just ignore Annie and just attack Charlie for the start of the game. And then like once Charlie's dead, they will probably be at a lower health total than Annie and just pressure her and then yeah, you don't ever get to use the ability again. So you're really relying on your lanyards to actually get self damage in. And then you have the problem of like the Mississippi Queens being too early or way too late in the deck, because you rely on them as well to stay alive for like the extra bit at the end. Because if you're taking so much self damage from the Lianiaps and then actually take damage from the opponent, well, your health will go down pretty fast. I mean, Charlie, of course, as your psychic, is a beast. He's like so strong. He's one of the best sidekicks. Um, but still, the opponent can just farm him at the start of the game and Annie will be sad. Anyways, I mean, she has her good matchups, just like the other ones in this tier, but there are just better options. I mean, don't sleep on her, but I don't think she will be picked like often. And then we'll get to the second Slings and Arrows fighter, and I know Punes from the Discord, aka Danny, will be pretty upset for this. I put Titania. Um, Titania on paper has every tool to at least be A tier. Um, she has Glamour of Sleep, which can give her like perfect exhaustion game, not taking damage ever, which sounds extremely broken. She has Glamour of Rhyme, where she can just play like 7 schemes in one turn. Um, Basically discard your 2 cards. It's not discarding, but like getting them out of your hand, dealing you 4, and then actually attacking 2 times, which is insane. But her biggest problem is consistency with her glamours because oh boy, you have to have so much luck to get the right one at the right time. Like half of her glamours usually are just useless in a matchup. If you don't get the swap glamour early and Oberon just dies, um, well, it's useless. The move through opposing fighter ones, I think it's invisibility, often is also useless because you're a move 2 fighter, so you would just move through them when you're adjacent and still be adjacent. What does that do? Probably nothing. Um, so yeah, it's just ugh. And sleep early is also pretty useless because hey, you're not in exhaustion anymore. Um, and she also has like only a limited a limited amount of cards that can actually cycle through her glamours. So I have already seen games where she gets like Glamour of Sleep on the bottom of the Glamour deck to like prepare for a good exhaustion game, but then she doesn't have enough cards to discard the Glamours, and then she's stuck on whatever she has before, and yeah. Then for the big Rhyme combo, you can just get Rhyme early, don't have the schemes, and well, if you want to cancel, you will have to discard Rhyme, um, which is pretty bad. Also, you're relying on Oberon so much, so if you don't have the swap Glamour, he will probably just die like turn 3. And there's like so many ifs. I mean, she can really be good. She can pop off in one turn with Glamour of Rhyme, and that's always scary, so the opponent will have to play around it, but it's luck, and it's so inconsistent that I just can't put her higher. I mean, yeah, if you have the luck and if you can make her work with her glamours, she is pretty strong. She's probably like B plus or A tier, but it's just not worth picking her in my opinion if you rely on just having luck with the glamours. They're just way better, far more consistent options that might not be as good into certain matchups, but at least they have like the minimum amount of ways to get through it and actually win. Because Titania, you either just win or you instantly lose, basically, if you have the wrong glamours. And yeah, lastly, in C+, I'll put Alice. Now, Alice um, is a real cool one because, oh boy, big Alice smacks big, of course, and small Alice can tank a lot. Her biggest problem, of course, is actually relying on her size change cards. Um, you have to have the size change cards when you want them, and you don't want the size change cards when you don't want them. The opponent can sometimes force you into bad sizes, or you don't find your size change cards, or they get fainted, and yeah, you might get stuck. So there is a bit of a consistency issue, but I mean, it's not as big of a deal because you have enough options, in my opinion, to just play around that. And I think she's gotten like a few good new matchups. Like she's pretty decent into Golden Belt. She is pretty good into Tesla, um, which are like really relevant right now. So I think Alice has seen like a bit of a jump upwards in the meta. Also with Slings and Arrows, I think she's pretty good into Shakespeare, for example. Um, but it's like not game breaking that she just suddenly is like really relevant again. But you have to watch out for Alice because Alice can be a pretty good counter pick as like last pick. Then B tier. These are fighters that like occupy a certain niche for me. Um, they will get like some value in a draft and are like okay options, but only like at a certain point, probably as last pick. They're kind of similar to the C plus ones, but just a bit more consistent overall. Uh, but yeah. First off, Bruce. Bruce is basically like Raptors and Bullseye, just being a bit more consistent. He has, of course, also his Jeets, which can do big combos, but he has also like be like Mortis to get them back reliably. He has a good amount of defenses, and pretty good ones as well. And he just has the tools against most matchups. Of course, he only has 14 health as a melee character, but his ability helps a lot, at least if you're playing against a melee character, to like never get double attacked, um, which is pretty good. And I mean, I think Bruce is just a more versatile Bullseye or Raptors. Um, in certain cases, of course, those two will be better than him, but I think he's just a better combo character overall. Just the same as Sisters. I think the Sisters are really underrated, like right now. Um, Sisters are really versatile with their playstyle. They can just go for like action turn and OTK, just like Roos or Raptors, with like the ingredients. If they have a good hand, they can also like get a 6 or 7 action turn. Um, They can just go for like ping and like attack a lot and then just deal you one every time at the end and just lower your health constantly. They can just go for pinning you and just pressuring really hard with their draw. Um, and just like keeping up hand size, attacking every turn twice, and just milling down your defenses. And they can actually play a really mean value game, which I find quite surprising because like big smackers are pretty bad into them because they have pricking of my thumbs, which is like if like Bigfoot comes and attacks a sister with a lock, well, he will take 4, which is insane. So they are really good against heavy hitters. They're good against like one health sidekick characters because they can ping them. They are good against like low draw characters because they can pin and just action chain. They're just really versatile overall. They still have their weaknesses of like having to manage their cauldron and the opponent kind of being able to play around that. Um, but they don't have the Raptors issue where if one of them gets defeated, they suck. No, all like even if only one sister is left, she can like put almost the same amount of work in as if you have all three of them. Um, so yeah, I think they're just really versatile overall and a pretty good pick. I think people just still have to figure out when to use them in what way because they're pretty complicated actually to figure out because you'll probably have to play them differently in each matchup. But I think in future they might even rise up to like B plus or even A tier. This might be a big bit of a highball for me, but I think they have the potential. And then next up, we have the big dinosaur being T-Rex. And now people will probably scream, "What? T-Rex is only B tier. What the hell? What is going on?" Banquest, or like Summer of Legends, is split advantage, meaning you only get to choose either map or your starting position. With T-Rex, you usually want map because if the opponent gets a map pick, they will just pick like maybe McMinnville or anything that's like extremely large and has bad zones, and you just cry. Um, So you'll probably go second every time, which is way bigger of a deal than you would think. Because there are many characters that can just like, if they go first, they can either build up their hand and get like a really good amount of defenses to withstand your pressure because they don't have to think about playing fatigue. You will exhaust first anyways. Um, or they just go pretty aggro at the start if they have some kind of draw or action game themselves pressuring your hand size because you only have, I think, 11 or 12 defenses, and some of them are really bad. Like you're just making it angry, which is like probably one of the worst defense cards in the game. Um, and actually pressure your health total. Like Rex of split advantage, it's just not good. I mean, just from testing, so many people picked Rex against me when I did some Banquest practice, and I mean, I won with Red against her. I won with Tesla against her. I won with Jill. There are just so many new fighters that can also like just action chain her or have like insane good defenses or just can run away the whole time. And I don't think she is that good anymore. Of course, she can still put a heck ton of pressure on the opponent, but it's probably not as worth it anymore to pick her because so many fighters just have a good chance if they go first and actually pressure you or get a good lot of defenses or like put their sidekicks in the way. I don't know. I just don't feel Rex as much right now. Next up, I'll put the Genie. Genie for me is always a tricky one because Genie is so hard to play. It's insane. Like to be a good Genie player, you have to practice every single matchup like at least 10 times to have a good understanding of what to do. Um, you rely on three wishes so much that it's almost like make or break. If you use the one wishes turn good, okay, you're good. If you kind of mess it up or just make one wrong call throughout the game, well, you've lost. And that just will always kind of keep Genie in around the B tier because he is solid if you know how to play him. He can make he can do some disgusting things. But if you don't, well, he will probably be even worse than that. So I'll settle him around the B tier because he has his matchups and can be really good. But I think they're just like overall more consistent and better options. And well, I said that this tier would be a bit more consistent than C plus. Well, yeah, the bane of consistency, Winter Soldier. If you have the right draw, probably one of the best characters in the game. If you don't, one of the worst. Of course, with Winter Soldier, it's like if the opponent cannot really pressure your hand size and just plays a value game, well, you will win. If you think about maybe Wukong, Dusa, those are like matchups, it's almost a free win for you because they have no real way to just pressure you that much. You'll just double maneuver every turn, just like attack or defend with reprogram like 3 or 4 times, and you win. Those matchups are so stupid. But then there are ones which are like pretty even-ish on paper, like the Yen one, where you have the tools, but most often than not, you don't get them at the point where you want them. Like you don't get your heals, you don't get your feints, or like you might get caught out of defense at some point because half of your deck is trash. You don't need it. Um, on the other hand, like if you get good draw and actually like know when to counter pressure a bit with your big sixes, well, he's pretty good. But he's just so inconsistent that I can't put him higher. He has his matchups where he just instant wins, but I mean, even in those, there might be a scenario where you just don't draw defense for like 3 turns and Wukong goes with double orcs into your deck, into your dead, basically. It can happen because Winter Soldier is just that unreliable. But I mean, we've all seen what Phantom can do with Winter Soldier in like Winter of Champions and Summer of Legends. So he still has potential if you know what to do, but I wouldn't put him higher than this. And then lastly in B tier, I will put the last out of Slings and Arrows, being Shakespeare. I know Shakespeare's a bit of a controversial one right now. Many people think he's like B or A. Many people say he's like pretty bad and actually sucks. I'm kind of in between because just like um, many other fighters in this tier, I think he has the tools. Of course, he has the big problem of actually having to complete his line. So the opponent can always like play around that. If you have 4 in your line, they will probably just attack you to make you use a card, and then well, you can't go for your horse turns. Or if you don't have anything in your line, well, they probably won't attack you because you could defend with a 4 syllable card and then go for a big horse turn. But I mean, at some point the opponent will have to approach, so it's not as big of a problem as people say it is, in my opinion. The bigger problem, in my opinion, is Shakespeare has no passes because all of his cards are attacks or versatiles. Um, so the opponent, if they only have one pass, they can run away the whole game, and you have to approach and boost a lot and waste cards, and that just really sucks. I mean, you technically have a pretty good value game because you can just chain the against, you can like recur feints if you complete the right line with them, but that's so situational. The best playstyle for Shakespeare, I think, is just to build up your hand for that one big combo turn where you chain like 2 or even all 3 horses together and just like do a 6-7 action turn and the opponent dies. I think that's the best and most consistent way to play Shakespeare. Um, and he definitely has his matchups. Like he can have up to like 9 1 health sidekicks, technically, which is like insane. We've seen from Muldoon how hard that can shut down melee fighters. And I mean, if the opponent doesn't have as many ways to move through your sidekicks, he is pretty good against only melee fighters. Or like against fighters that don't have draw, he can do disgusting things with horses. But just like with Robin, there are many characters that just have the tools to tear through your defenses, through your one-off sidekicks, because your actual defenses on Shakespeare suck ass. Like they're so bad. Um, there's so many characters that can actually do that right now. Um, that I can't put him higher. Just with a small exception, ex like you're not Robin, so you'll not like attack him once per turn. You have the option to just combo chain like the 6 actions in one turn. So I would put him like on the top of B tier if you know how to make him work and can properly organize his line. I think he can be pretty decent. Um, and it's probably like also the most consistent one, except for Sisters, like from Sings and Arrows. But yeah, this is where I would put him right now. He has his matchups. Yeah. Next up, B plus. Now we get into the real good territory. B plus for me are the fighters that are definitely viable. You have to think about them when drafting. Um, they have like at least 4 or 5 pretty good or even winning matchups into the top tiers. So if you don't watch out as good, they might be pretty nasty, but overall they're not as decent to everyone. First of all, I'll put Ghost Rider. So Ghost Rider, like when he got first released, his rooming because you could boost it was insanely strong. Then that got removed just by clarification. Um, that you can always only move forward with Hellfire, and people thought, oh, he sucks ass. Um, and I think with the like last few sets, people kind of just figured out again, oh, he's not that bad because he has his good matchups. He is pretty good into Yanenga. He is pretty good into Medusa. He is pretty good into Bigfoot. Um, he is like decently good against Jill, if not even like really favorite. He can handle Luke. He's pretty good into Wukong. He's okay against Injin. So he has like many really decent matchups, but also so many matchups that just smack his ass, like She-Hulk or Tesla, something like that, who just absolutely destroy him without like having any chance. Because like his lack of defensive draw, and like his problem of actually keeping his hellfire up can be exploited in some matchups pretty well. But he still has so many decent matchups right now that I can't put him lower, and I think he is like pretty versatile pick. Um, if you have like the right opportunity to pick him, go for it. I mean, there are many cases where I've just seen a Ghost Rider last pick, and that was like insanely good. Um, so yeah, don't sleep on Ghost Rider. He's pretty good actually right now. Then let's go with good old Dracula. Drac is a tricky one because I mean I think Drac has fallen off a bit due to the recent sets. Tomoe hurt him a lot just because of like discarding beast form or bidding and then like pressuring you so much because you have low value, a low amount of defenses. Same with Tesla, who can just like pressure you so much that it's like nasty. Then Jill can outvalue you. Bat can kinda outvalue you, but that's pretty even one. And yeah, I mean, Drac is still pretty decent against those melee only fighters that have to approach him because he can like farm pings if he wants, or just make them approach because he has so many passes and then fatigue them. But once it starts to get like into the ranged territory, it already gets tricky. And like even the melee characters, the new ones have like many options to actually play around like Beast from Lethal or to play around like Drac's value game. Um, that he's not as great anymore, but he still has his good options. Like if the opponent has a lineup of Bigfoot, Golden Bat, Achilles, yeah, go Dracula. Definitely. Go him. He's pretty good. Just like not as versatile anymore as he used to be earlier. Then next up, this will probably surprise many of you. I'll put Black Widow. Now, Widow is kinda like I've seen her being named as the new Nenga when she came out because she is so versatile with her schemes when to recur them. Maria is one hell of a beefy sidekick. And yeah, at the start I think she was. But now with a new set, I think she suffered a lot. Starting with She-Hulk. She-Hulk is like the bane of her existence, next to Bigfoot. And then with TTA, I think she kind of sucks against Golden Bat. Tesla destroys her. Jill is pretty even with her, so that's also not as great. Um, and then Tomoe is also pretty good against her, and even Titania has like probably a winning matchup. So I think her lack of high value defenses has like people figured out how to like counter Widow because earlier people were just like going for Maria because she could give so much value, but now I think in many matchups people just realized, oh, I don't even have to go for Maria because Widow doesn't have defensive draw and her defenses are pretty bad. So if I just attack Widow a bunch, she will have to swap with Maria and then Maria dies anyways. And that's like what I've seen in many matchups now, where I just can't go Widow safely anymore because there are just so many characters that can just smack so big above her defenses and just ignore Maria that it's not safe picking her anymore. Of course, if you have a good lineup, you can go her because she's still really versatile. She's even with like half of the roster. So if you're a decent Widow player and know what you're doing, go for it. But I wouldn't say she's as good as she was on release. We get to Daredevil. Um, Daredevil is of course like known for his going infinite because he was the first one who could actually do that. And in some matchups you can still do that, and then the opponent cries because you just fatigue them. Mainly like Dusa, you can do it. On Jill, you can kinda do it. There are like many good ones, but the problem with Daredevil is right now just the top tiers are really, really good against him. Um, that he's just fallen out a bit. Um, he doesn't have any draw on defense, so a lot of pressure can just like mull down his defenses because he only has 12 of them. You might have some inconsistency issues with like getting the devils, and like the opponent can also think about, okay, if he devils now, he will get like 4 defenses back, so let's feint. And even if you didn't play the devil, they will like be like, okay, well, at least he will get 1 defense less next time when he plays it. Um, so there's always like the bit of control in your opponent's hand around your own playstyle. And it's just, yeah. I mean, just like the other ones, he has many good matchups into the higher tiers where he is like favored, sometimes free win or sometimes just even. But there are also like many counters. So watch out a bit when picking him and when the opponent might pick him because he's still a decent option, but not like great overall. And then last one, I will go with Tomoe. Tomoe is actually really, really versatile in a way where she's like okay into most fighters, but it's like always a bit of an uphill battle because yes, she can technically deal with Bigfoot. She can technically deal Luke. She can also do good against Jill or Red or even like She-Hulk. But it's always like she could maybe, but they're just safer options. Um, I think she doesn't have like as many really big counters. Um, only like maybe Wukong, who's like the bane of her existence. Um, probably Yen a bit, if Yen knows what she's doing, and everything else is like even-ish. But most of the time, it's a bit unfavored for her, but she can still do it. So it's the option if you actually really are a really good Tomoe and you practice the matchups a lot, you might feel comfortable just going with her into anything. Um, But on the other hand, well, they're just like if the opponent has like drafted already all of their four fighters, you could go to Moe, who's like okay into many of them, or you go a fighter who's like pretty good into three of them and you ban the fourth one. So I think there are some niche cases where you actually can go her if there's like no really good option and you just want something decent overall. I think you go to Moe, but it's not like she is the best. And then we've seen one hell of a rise. Like, oh boy, I was surprised by this. How good this character is. Sinbad. Sinbad is a menace right now. Like, holy macaroni. This guy has so many good matchups. Um, he destroys Yen. He can put decent work against Bat. Um, he can handle and is pretty good against Tesla. He can do good into Red Shulk, Houdini, Luke, Jill. Like, Sinbad is a menace right now. Um, of course, he has the usual problems of being a pretty linear fighter. So if you pick Sinbad, the opponent will know what you do every time. So if they have some kind of like way to play around that and actually exploit it, well, you kind of fucked. But there are just not as many fighters that can do that right now because well, something like Dusa will probably be banned out anyways. Um, you can just like maybe ban Wukong and well, if you don't give them a good option to pick engine, you're pretty good with Sinbad. Like he's so good into many of the top tiers that yeah, I'll put him here. He is a really relevant pick, and you shouldn't sleep on Sinbad. Sinbad is really good right now. Next up, I'll go with Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a funny one because I remember when Zero Skater made his tier list last year after Summer of Legends, and I think he said something like, well, if I didn't know what to pick and just wanted a solid option overall, the answer was Moon Knight. Um, I think he lost that case a bit. Just a bit. Just because there are like some fighters where he's not as good against anymore. Like Golden Bat gives him a lot of trouble, Jill gives him a lot of trouble. Um, Tesla can give him trouble. It's like not as bad and it's probably a bit favored for him, but also not as great. There are just many even matchups. Um, where I think yeah, he's a good option overall. He has many good matchups, but there are also like some pretty good counters. So he's kind of like Sinbad right now. He has a pretty like obvious playstyle. You go in on your control turns, you defend as Mr. Knight, and you run away as Moon Knight. So the opponent can exploit that a bit, and they will most often know what you're up to as Moon Knight. I think you have a bit more options than Sinbad just because you can play a mean fatigue game as Khonshu with your two passes. But yeah, it's still like pretty obvious what you'll be doing, and the opponent can play around it. And it's like Moon Knight is solid overall, not the best, not the worst. He has some bad matchups, like a bit more bad matchups than like the A plus characters, but decent choice. He'll like be relevant in like 1 out of 3 drafts probably. So definitely think about him, consider picking him. If you have the choice and actually like good matchups, yep, he's fine. And kind of the same niche, I would put Achilles. Um, I think just from the matchup spread, these two are pretty similar. Um, where they hate like the one health psychic characters. And yeah, their playstyle is kind of like a bit obvious. But with Achilles, I think you have a bit more versatility just because you can like go. You have two different playstyles where you can just go Unga Bunga, kill pet instant and like aggro down, or you just actually play a good value game with recurring battle hardens and keeping Pat alive. Just the mind game of when to kill Pat um, can actually like sometimes just instant win you a game. If the opponent kills Pat at the wrong point, even if they think it might be good for them, um, or they forget to kill Pat and then who you just win or whatever. Um, It's just pretty dynamic when playing as or against Achilles. And just like Moon Knight, he has like a decent amount of good matchups. Just I think there are just more solid options into the general amount than him. Um, where it's like, yeah, he has many good matchups, but he also has like two or three really hard counters, and if you can't avoid them, well, you'll probably end up self-banning him, so maybe there might be a better option. So, really decent, and don't forget him, which I think no one will. Next up, I'll go with Injin. And people might scream, what? Muldoon is this high? Why? Um, because of a simple reason, that being bank pressed. I think in Arsenal, Muldoon is way worse. Because in Arsenal, you don't know what the opponent picks usually, because it's like you pick at the same time and ban out like the mirrors. So, well, if the opponent just goes like full on range setup with like maybe Genie, Widow, Yen, and you pick Muldoon, well, yeah, rest in pepperoni. But since in Banquest you already know what your opponent has, Muldoon is one hell of a nasty pick. Like, oh boy, Muldoon can be savage. Um, I also think Muldoon has like a pretty decent matchup spread right now. If you like ban out or pick for yourself like Yenanga, Tesla, Bat, I think from that point on maybe Houdini as well. And then you just go Muldoon, and yeah, he just shuts down so many fighters. Like we just talk about Sinbad, Moon Knight, and Achilles. Well, guess who hard counters them all? Muldoon. Um, so if your opponent goes like for that big smacky roster, or maybe Bigfoot as well, or She-Hulk, just go with Muldoon. I mean, he's so good against these archetypes that I can't put him lower because you know what your opponent picks. You already know like two or three of the fighters usually. And then you just pick Muldoon and he will destroy them all. So it either forces the ban from them or they will have to get a really good counter pick last. Um, and yeah, I think in Banquest, Muldoon is just a menace. Um, and yeah, same as well goes to Wukong. I think Wukong and Muldoon are pretty similar. Um, I've seen drafts where like I got to pick both of them and my opponent had like a full melee roster. And then they were like, oh, yeah, well, I've lost. Because just like Muldoon, Wukong shuts down the certain archetype so much. I just think Wukong is a bit more versatile because he can deal with ranged a bit better just because of like his value game with Orxis and he can go pretty aggro and isn't like that vulnerable as Muldoon is. And he doesn't rely on like scheming to get his clones, he can just summon them. Um, but yeah, I would put these two at the top of A tier. They will not be viable every single draft, but you definitely have to keep them in mind. Because if you forget, like, oh yeah, Muldoon and Wukong exist, well, your whole draft is ruined. And then let's go to A+. These are like prime picks because the S plus and most of the S tier will be banned usually at the start. So the A plus tier characters will be like the primary targets when actually picking, usually. Um, so yeah, the A tiers will be like good answers to them, and the B plus is like counters. Let's start with Houdini. Houdini is just always like this X factor where he can just instant win a game. Turn one with set stage boost and big reveal 9 damage, GG. Um, and he has so much aggression, so much pressure. He can always attack you basically, and he can win any game at any point. That's just Houdini, and he has so many just good matchups for him. He's a pretty good answer into Luke, who is really good right now. He's a really good counter to Tesla. He's really good into Red. Of course, he sucks ass against Shulk, for example, but even there, he's Houdini. If he's lucky, he can still win. So, like, if you have no clue right now, and just want to go for a wild card pick, I think Houdini is like your option, and he will probably always be just because of the nature of his deck. Um, and yeah. Next up, we will go with Dr. Jill Trent. Jill is just solid overall. Like, she doesn't have any like really bad matchups. She's just decent into everything, basically. She has Daisy, who's one of the best, if not the best sidekick in all of Unmatched. She has such a good value game. She has Hypno Ray Blaster, which can like also reveal cards from the opponent's deck, giving you additional info on what they will actually have. Of course, with that, there's still a bit of luck implied, but I mean, just for the knowledge, it's usually good. And with your gadgets, you have two really decent options throughout a game where you can just decide based on the situation what you actually want to do. Like I said, she's so versatile and basically even into everything. So there's almost never a draft where you can't go Jill. So yeah, she's just solid. She doesn't like shut down any type of characters, just like Wukong or Injun. Um, but she also like doesn't get shut down by anything basically. So she's just solid. She probably won't get banned early because yeah, she's not that big of a counter, but she's just solid, like I said. So yeah, she will always be a viable option. Next up, we have She-Hulk. She-Hulk kind of fits the same niche as Jill, um, meaning like she doesn't shut down so many things. Um, I mean, some of them, yeah, but that's more of the B plus or B tier characters. Um, but she's just decent overall into like everything in A or higher. Um, the worst matchups for her being like probably Moon Knight and Jill. Um, but she also has like some pretty good matchups. For example, against Achilles, she is pretty good. She can just survive him with her 20 health, which is stupid. Against Wukong, she's probably one of the best counters into Wukong. Because you can't just farm your Omegas and Sensationals on the clones. And if Wukong doesn't summon them, well, he takes a shit ton of damage. Um, And yeah, she looks just really decent overall. I think there are a bit more answers to her than to Jill, but on the other hand, she also shuts down some of the characters way better. So she's still a decent option overall, and you definitely have to think about her. She's not as versatile, but still like if you want to um, get the draft to go in a certain way, you can just go She-Hulk first pick, for example, and then you'll probably know that the opponent will most likely not pick maybe Wukong, which is maybe exactly what you want. Yeah, you might risk that She-Hulk doesn't have as good of a matchup into like maybe Jill or Moon Knight, but at least you could force the opponent to not pick certain fighters, which is like also pretty good. And even like She-Hulk can still win Jill and Moon Knight, so it's not like she has no chance. So yeah, I think she's just really good overall, and definitely one of the best picks in any draft. And then next up, oh boy, have I underestimated this guy for the last few months. Luke Cage is a menace right now. Holy macaroni, he benefited so much from Brains and Brawn, and mostly TTA. Like his matchup spread just skyrocketed. He's really good into Golden Bat. He's really good into Tesla. He's really good into Jill. He only sucks a bit against Annie, but well, Annie is in C plus, so she won't be as relevant. Um, Luke is just one hell of a menace right now. Um, having taking two less combat damage every time, in addition to like trash talk, shutting down any like blank four or lower attack, is just insane. Then you pair that with like basically two print six value attacks, another three fives, and then Misty, who's like was one hell of an attacking power. Luke is just so good right now. Um, there are only like probably two counters I would say right now in like top draft, one of them being Bigfoot, who has basically lethal from start of the game, so you'll have to think about that. Um, and then maybe Little Red, but that's like only if Red really knows what she's doing, and you can still win that. But other than that, if you like ban out Bigfoot, yep, you're good. You're good into anything. Just go Luke, and it's insane. Luke is so good right now. I can't emphasize this enough. If like you somehow thought Luke is like, yeah, around B right now in solid, try him out more. He is so good. And then last in A plus, might be a bit biased here, but I'll go with Little Red. I don't know. I've just had basically no draft where Red wasn't relevant because Red is just good into everything that is like high tier, like A and above. The only two like things that I would say are probably almost unwinnable are like Achilles and Sinbad. And anything else she can do. Like even Houdini. I've won a game against Houdini. Because like either you get position where you can like go first and yeah, pressure him a bit, but usually you go red on map advantage, in which case you can just pick small map and just rain havoc on Houdini. Which is pretty fun because he can't run away that often. So yeah, and she's like good into everything else. Most relevant, I think she's one of the best picks into Luke. After like Bigfoot is banned and stuff. She is one of the best picks into Jill, just because like she can confirm kill Daisy pretty easily. She is probably one of the best picks into like Bigfoot, Tesla, and Yen, who are just solid overall and like they will come up next. Um, and yeah, there's just basically nothing she's afraid of. If you at the first stage of the draft where you ban 3 fighters each, if you ban out maybe Achilles to make it not as obvious because Sinbad will be not as relevant if you like maybe pick Wukong yourself or Injin. Yep, go red and she's fine into everything. Which is just insane. Like her matchups red skyrocketed as well with TTA, I think. So yeah, she's just not afraid of anything and like fighters like Achilles being not as relevant in the meta right now as he was like in the last two tournaments just helped her a lot in my opinion. And yeah, I just think she's like the top of A plus. She's not yet S tier. I would love that, but yeah, she is like a really good pick. And then we'll get to the territory of probably will be banned or has to be your first pick in the draft. We'll go with Tesla. Tesla is just, oh boy, he can put so much pressure onto the opponent. He has so much draw. All of his cards are so good. Like if you have two coils, all of them are useful. Um, you have so many options at any point, and it's just about managing those coils to the fullest extent, and you will probably win almost every matchup that you get. You can play a mean fatigue game because you technically have 6 random discards, 3 of them being top decks, so that's good. And you attack so often that, well, attacks are passes. So if you attack so often, well, you don't need passes to actually run away. And then you also have like the option to action chain with a print force, and you can swing for some 7 value attacks, which is insane. Like you have so much damage with Tesla. Um, he's versatile overall. I don't think there's like any real bad matchup for him except for like maybe Luke. But if you ban Luke, well, Tesla is fine with everything and probably favored into half of the roster. Um, so yeah, Tesla is a menace. Tesla is insanely good. And yeah, if he's not banned, pick him. It will probably always be good. Same goes for this old dude here, Bigfoot. One of the earliest characters to be released and still one hell of a menace. Like, Bigfoot's deck is pretty linear. You have big values, big attacks, really good defenses, and that's it. And it sounds pretty boring. It is, but it's still really, really good. I mean, you can't complain about three 6 value attacks. Jackalope is also one of, if not the best sidekicks in all of Unmatched, with Horns being 6 auto damage plus 3 locks. Usually it's like already 12 damage onto the opponent. And yeah, your blocks are insane. Everything about Bigfoot is insane. You have your ability to actually keep up draw if you need, again, in any aggro matchup. Um, yeah, Bigfoot is just good overall. He of course has like one or two counters, like Wukong. If you just ban him out, well, you're fine, and maybe also Dusa or Yen, which you don't really like, but you can still win those. Um, and then, well, you're fine. You're fine with everything. So, yeah, Bigfoot is also like one of the candidates, just like Tesla. He might get banned at the first pre-bans, but if not, he's probably one of, if not the best pick you can go for. And then we'll go with Dusa. Dusa is just, yeah, she is Medusa. I mean, she has all of her things going for her just like always. She has her ability, which is just like free damage every turn if you do it right. She has 6 discards, 4 passes. Um, yeah, she can play in one hell of a mean value game. She attacks so often and can really put up pressure that Gaze at the end is so threatening for the opponent because they will have to defend every single attack before that, just because Gaze exists. And yeah, I mean, she has suffered a bit from TTA, just because Bat is probably a direct counter to her, unlike Bat's map advantage. Tesla can handle her, Jill can handle her, um, but I mean, it's still Medusa. It's still Medusa. She can still win those matchups, even though they are not great for her. Um, so yeah, just like with Tesla and Bigfoot, if she is not banned, she's probably one of, if not your best pick at the start. Just because like, she's like good into everything and she doesn't give like anything away. Whereas if you pick Bigfoot and you didn't ban Wukong, well, the opponent will go Wukong and yeah, your Bigfoot cries. With Medusa, I don't think you have any of these matchups where you just cry after that, except like Bat maybe or Strange. But if Strange is not banned, well, that's your fault. Um, and yeah, and then lastly, I was really debating with myself whether to put him in S plus or just an S. I think I'll go with Golden Bat. Um, Bat is just, whoa, he's strong. He has one of, if not the most insane value game I have ever seen. Like if someone wins a direct value game against Yen and that pretty easily, that says you how strong the fighter is. Um, the recurring of Alpine, if you do it X couple of times, you get basically a to use a 36 card deck. Then you have 3 random discards. You have the chance to get another 2 cards back from your discard pile, um, with like Inside of the Ancients, or what is the card name? Then you can like once you're done with your Alpine recursion and it goes to endgame, you can actually also get like a total of technically 5 passes, usually 4, because you played the first Alpine like before getting the pass. But yeah, technically 36 cards, usually on average plus 4 passes is just is insane. Um, Bat is just one hell of a menace. Of course, he is a bit um, he is a bit like bad if the opponent can like aggress him early, but I mean either you will have map pick, which means you pick a big map where you can run away pretty easily, where your opponent can't aggress, or you have position pick, in which case you can go first and get a good lot of draw at the start, get your Alpine loop starting, and yep. So yeah, I think I always tend to ban Bat out just because he is so good into basically everything. He completely destroys Shulk, he completely destroys Medusa usually, he usually destroys Jill, he's just such a menace, and yeah. And then we get to the S plus tier. If you don't ban these fighters in a Banquest draft, it's your own fault. Like, I don't know. It's just, yeah, it is what it is. Yenenga. Oh boy, Zero Skater will love this. Yenenga in Banquest is probably like the best fighter in Banquest. Like, she is good against everything. She has like one or two counters direct that are relevant, being Bat and Sinbad. Um, and if you ban those in pre-ban, you go Yen and you win with her. Basically, that's how it goes. You go Yen, you win with Yen. Um, of course, she's not like, yeah, she wins by a large margin, but she just like is decent and she will win. It will seem close, but you will still have like control throughout the whole game because it's Yen. Um, Luke might be a tough matchup for her, but usually she still wins if you know how to approach it. Um, Tesla might be a bad matchup for her if you don't know what to do, but if you do, well, she can still like put it out pretty decently. And like, so there's like Yen is even with everything. So if you know what you do, you probably win, which is insane. Um, and yeah, like Yen is basically the perfect pick in Banquest because yeah, the opponent knows what you will pick, so riskier ones like Sinbad, who will get shut down pretty easily by one or two fighters, not that good, except like as last pick if you already know what to do. But I think there is no better first pick than Yen. There is just no better. Even like Sherlock or Electra, they have counters. They have direct hard counters that are still really relevant and don't get shut down that easily. Yen doesn't. Yen has Golden Bat, and if you ban him, well, that's it. And even if the opponent picks Sinbad, well, you go with something like Wukong Engine, and yeah, you just self ban Yen. But Yen is basically the best pick, probably in my opinion. She's not like the strongest, which is why I'll put her like in last place in the S plus, because just like the other three are just so fundamentally broken that they should just get banned every time. But like Yen is probably the best overall out of the available fighters because the other three will not be available usually. Yeah, speaking of the other three, third place will be Doctor Strange. Oh boy, is Strange stupid. I mean, having technically like an infinite deck count, having 10 passes, having infinite healing, shutting down melee characters completely with blanking their values, discarding cards when they attack you. There's like nothing Strange cannot do. The only thing he doesn't like is constant ranged pressure from like maybe Tesla. Um, Widow Yen can do decently into him. Rex is probably the biggest counter to him, but I mean, Rex is not that viable. And what he doesn't like as well is like if he can't run away. So yeah, Tomoe is not that great uh, for him. Houdini is not that great for him. But I mean, it's Strange. He just basically, if you let Strange go through, half of the roster is unplayable. So yeah, I mean, either you ban him or you limit yourself so hard that it's almost an auto loss from there on. Same as well goes to Electra. I mean, she has Houdini as a hard counter. She has Luke, which is not great for her, but she can still win. Shulk, she is not great, but she can still win. And I mean, if you let Electra go through, you basically say, okay, I will pick Houdini, Shulk, and Luke, because everything else will not have a chance. And then, like, if you limit yourself to these three fighters, your opponent will already know what you pick, and then they can play around that and just self-ban Electra after that. And yeah, she just shuts down the roster again. Just like, except for Strange. Strange at least has like a couple of like good options against him, where it's like a bit more versatile if you want to play against him. Whereas Electra basically only has like these few in top tier, maybe Tesla as well, and everything else is just trash. Everything else is not playable against her. Um, and yeah, that's just Electra for you. She's just incredibly stupid. And yeah, I mean, the king of stupidity will have to be Sherlock, just as like earlier, as always. I mean, I think there has not been a single list where Sherlock has not been the number one character. He wins against basically everyone, without even like putting get, without even having to sweat. I mean, the only things he worries about a bit is like maybe Houdini, and he can still win this. If he like discards a few key cards, maybe a big reveal, or set the stage. Um, he's a bit worried of T-Rex, but again, T-Rex is not that viable. Maybe Sinpad if you don't know how to approach it, and that's basically it against everything. Well, Yen, okay, or like the other ones in S plus, but I mean, what should I say? It's Sherlock. Sherlock is broken. Um, yeah, that will be my list for the current Banquest meta for Summer of Legends. Feel free to disagree in the comments and like write your opinions on how strong you think some characters are, or just ask for like specific reasoning or like some matchups if you want. But yeah, this will be it. And I'll see you guys again on Sunday when we take a closer look on Shakespeare at Strategy Sunday. And yeah, I'll see you around. Have a nice day.